Most of the Arnold Arboretum landscape is a meticulously curated collection of woody plants from around the world. But several sites in the Arboretum have a more complicated land use history and are less actively managed. Two such sites are Weld Hill and Bussey Brook Meadow. These are two of the Arboretum's urban wilds.
My name is Peter Del Tredici. I'm the Senior Research Emeritus at the Arnold Arboretum. I worked at the Arboretum for 35 years and retired in 2014. The construction of the Weld Hill site really did a number on the existing ecology, and it essentially just destroyed everything with there and then put this layer of rubble on top of that. Part of the Weld Hill building is there's a lot of geothermal wells up on the top of the hill. I think there's like 60 or more geothermal wells. And because this is New England, they had to drill through rock, and they had to go down about 500 feet to get to a spot where there was enough heat to make it worthwhile. So the tailings from those 60 plus wells came up on the as a result of it, which was just this incredible pile of ground up rock that was spread all over the site with no soil amendments or anything like that. I was called in to come up with a planting plan that would actually be tolerant of the existing site conditions, which is covered with all of this tailings from the mining that happened when they were digging the geothermal wells. In my book, Wild Urban Plants, in the appendix, there's a section on what I call the Cosmopolitan Urban Meadow, which consists of some combination of native and non-native species that are going to be tolerant of typical urban conditions. That would be fill soils, full sun, drought, and we're not trying to restore or recreate anything. We're just trying to create a plant community that will tolerate the conditions that prevail on the site. So, that's things like tansy and oxeye daisy and chicory, clovers, things like that, and that they're not too aggressive, and they've been around. A lot of these plants came in with the colonists basically in the 1600s and 1700s. So these are plants that have been in North America for 300 to 400 years, and it's been changing from year to year. There's a lot more goldenrod than there used to be at the beginning, and there's less of the frost aster. There was a ton of chicory there, but that sort of is back in the background. So it's really a moving target. It's constantly changing and adapting. What we're seeing now is ecological functionality is starting to happen. You're getting, those species, they're not native, but they're very attractive to pollinators. There's no doubt about that. And, the same is true of birds. You get insects, then you get birds, and, I wouldn't be surprised if there's not, quite a bit of nesting going on in the tall grasses. It's really what I call adaptive management, which is the management regime. Depends on how the growing conditions on a particular year, and which species you want to favor and which ones you want to you've got too much chicory or you've got too much oxeye daisy. The idea then is to mow it once a year to keep the woody vegetation from becoming dominant. And that mowing process also favored some species over other species. The idea behind this cosmopolitan urban meadow, which is, we want to cover the site and begin the process of primary succession, as we're talking about. So you've got to build soil. So we needed species that were capable, that were good primary succession species that could build soil over time and allow the succession processes to go on. I refer to Bussey Brook Meadow as the Arnold Arboretum gone wild, because you'd be surprised what you find in there. There's Ohio buckeye in there, there's Katsura tree, there's Halesia. It's just amazing. Once you let nature, you leave it alone, that's the key, you're going to be amazed at what you find. A lot of people who visit the Arboretum really like Bussey Brook Meadow because they consider that nature. That's urban nature, and they want to have and the Arboretum is great, but it's not really nature. It's manicured, it's well maintained, it's like everything is in its place. It's not nature, it's something different. Whereas you go to Bussey Brook Meadow, and there you can actually interact with nature. The Arboretum got half of the meadow in the 1920, and we use that area as a nursery. Before that, though, it had been used for agriculture, it had been used for a whole variety of purposes. It was actually a very large wetland, and the Forest Hill subway station is sitting on a wetland. So there's been, from the mid 1600s, through, let's just say 1900, a large portion of that meadow was filled in. There's a train tracks, there's a sewer line that runs through it, there's roadways, and so that meadow has been shrinking over time. Including in 1950s, there was a large drumlin that was just removed in its entirety for God knows what purposes, and then they built a 5-acre landfill on the site. So that site, it's had, roughly 300 years of abuse in it. It's a lot more convoluted, that's for sure. I would say that the wetland portion of it has been reduced by at least 50% of its original size. It wasn't until the 1990s that a man named John Blackwell and his wife Eugenia Beale essentially got the state legislature to pass legislation that allowed the state land and the city land to be put it under the indenture of the Arnold Arboretum. And the Bussey Brook, that together with the parcel that the Arboretum owned, opened it up, made it officially part of the Arnold Arboretum. The ecological functionality of that site has been, impaired by this filling over time. And in the 70s and 80s, there was a series of rainfall events that, caused catastrophic flooding in the surrounding areas because the wetland had been, consumed by development, essentially. And, the water holding capacity was nowhere near what it used to be. I made the case that, in fact, the best and highest use of this would be to make it a site for the what I call an LTER, long-term ecological research on urban ecology. And we were going to do, we'll keep the paths open, we'll remove hazard trees, but we'll mow the meadows once a year to keep the woody plants down. But other than that, we're just going to let succession, we're going to let nature follow its own course, and we're going to try to track this as well as we can. It's an urban wild. That's what the technical name for it is. And they're really important. They function like a park, but with a tenth of the amount of maintenance that a formal park requires. The best use for a place like Bussey Brook Meadow is to observe how these novel ecosystems function and change over time. The wetland itself, it's got Phragmites in it, it's got yellow flag iris, it's got reed canary grass, and they've all sort of, in the wetland, sorted themselves out along a moisture gradient. So they've created a functional wetland, even though none of them are native to North America. And when you go there in the early spring, it's just a sensational, it is still a functional wetland. There's no doubt about that. That meadow still has a lot of holding capacity. And of course, there's the wildlife that's supported. That would be all the pollinators, amazing array of pollinators, the birds, and the mammals. That's the one place where you can always see deer at the Arboretum. I'm sure there's coyotes in there as well. The vegetation that's there now is part of the healing process. Who knows what it's going to look like 50 years from now, but it's not going to look anything the way it looks now. If you're going to work in an urban environment of any sort, or for that matter, any environment, you have to include humans are part of the equation. You can only understand it in terms of human behavior. We want to call it an ecological process, but really it's as much sociological as it is ecological. You've got to understand the forces that drive human migration, and then that helps explain the ecological succession processes. So understanding the past is really the key to understanding the present as well.